Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Here we go again. Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Two parts. Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Everybody. Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Friends, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Friends, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Last time. Friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Harmony. Yeah. Good morning. Good morning and welcome. Some harmony is planned and some harmony is spontaneous and improvised. And I love seeing what takes shape when we improvise. And so we hear notes and chords that we might not otherwise have thought of or imagined ahead of time. I'm the Reverend Kevin Tarsa. The wonderful Tracy Pepper, who was to be here today as our worship associate and as a speaker, is home attending to her health this morning. We will very much, yes, that's an appropriate response. We will very much miss her presence and her very unique voice. We're glad to support her well-being and healing, and our love and prayers are with you, Tracy. Carol Nimick, co-leader of the worship team, has very kindly and generously stepped into the worship associate role today. Thank you, Carol. To help us all be as present as possible while we're together, I invite us to silence our cell phones for this hour. I invite you to take a silent moment to look around at who's near you, just to acknowledge the presence of those who are with you today. Oh, it's so hard not to talk. And then to help us all be present, another kind of, we'll follow that off switch ritual with an on switch ritual. I invite you to take 3 meaningful, increasingly deep and aware breaths in and out at your own pace, 3 breaths. With the aim of bringing our attention to this moment, in this place, with these people.
Alan, are you offering our land acknowledgement today? Alan Duncan offers our land acknowledgement. Thank you.
Each Sunday, we remind ourselves to remember that the history of this area continues to live in people's lives and bodies, including our own. With the symbol of these black oak acorns, we remind ourselves that the Nisenan people are still here among us today, resilient beyond genocide and generations of erasure and exclusion from California's history. Let us remember with care and commitment that we gather today on Nisenan land.
We light this chalice, this flaming chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist tradition. I've asked Carol to light our chalice this morning. We light this chalice, I think. Oh, look at all that care and concern. It takes a village. There we go. Thank you. Thank you both. Yes, we light this chalice if we can and when we can. I invite you to echo this phrase, we light this chalice. We light this chalice to remember the universe-birthed spark, the divine spark, the inherent dignity and worthiness shining in every person. We light this chalice to guide us toward doing what we can to help everyone, meaning everyone, to thrive, to flourish, to reach what they need. We light this chalice to keep our own flames burning when winds reach gale force strength and downpours drench our hopes. We light this chalice to hold the light and warmth for us when we cannot, until in our healing, we're able to reach for it and take it up again and recognize it burning, shining in our own heart. Yes, we light this chalice. We light this chalice. Thank you. When I was in seminary, I learned that at about the age of 7 or 8, as we're growing, developing, our brains are coming online in new ways, we start to suddenly attend to the idea of fairness. And fairness becomes really important to us. I remember this. 3rd grade, I went to Catholic school, and the idea that someone would go to hell who didn't believe in Jesus when they had never heard of Jesus was just so patently unfair. I was indignant in 3rd grade, right? I've learned since then that it actually starts really by the age of 3, that sense of fairness. They've learned that it's earlier, but boy, it takes expression, I think, at around 7 or 8. So I remember a time in our family, because fairness was important with many kids in the family. This is probably when there were 6 kids of eventually 8 at that time. And for dessert one day, my family had one Snickers bar to eat. And my parents said that they would forego that piece of Snickers bar. So my mom had that technique of when something was to be divided, having one of us cut it. You know this, I see this. And then everyone else gets to choose their piece first, right? Which inspires you to cut very even pieces because that's what would be fair, right? And because you didn't want to miss out on your piece, basically. So to this day, I can cut things into halves and thirds like nobody's business. So that's a way of thinking about equality, right? We're all going to get exactly the same piece. So I'm going to ask for some volunteers. These are non-speaking roles to tell a story or tell an idea, really. So I'm looking for one person who's quite tall, one person who's quite not tall, and someone in between. Anybody willing? And I should tell you know that I'll invite you to step up about 10 inches up on a step. So that's the other piece of this. This is the tall one. George, thank you. If you take place on one end. Allison's going to offer you the tall one. So we either need someone between the two or someone shorter than Allison. Those are the options. Ah, excellent. Come on up, Ruby, you willing? Perfect. So Allison, you'll be in the middle.
Yay!
Ruby, this is perfect. Perfect. Oh, Susan, we're gonna have Ruby come. Yeah. Thank you for volunteering. And while Ruby's coming up, I think I could use 2 more volunteers, non-speaking role, to hold up a piece of fabric together. Oh, I see Lori and I see Sue. Great. Perfect. This is perfect. So if one of you on one side, one on the other, and you're going to stretch it across so it's right about this level. Right about that level. So what's the issue? So let's say all these people want to see something on the other side of this fence, we're going to call it, right? They want to see you because you are so darn beautiful looking over here and friendly. They want to see you. But there's a challenge that not everybody can see. So one way we could try to make this better is to give everybody a box to stand on. And Ruby, I'm going to slide this forward, and here's your case standing up. Yay! Almost. But what's the challenge? Still not quite working. So this would be a form of equality, right? Everybody gets the same box to stand on. Everybody got exactly the same size piece. But that still didn't do its thing. So let's try another way. Let's say George comes down. Because it's not particularly safe, we won't pile 2 up. But one way would be to have extra boxes for Ruby or someone or have someone help. So this is a bit more fair, right? Everybody can see over the fence. This is what we might call equity, where everybody gets what they need, whether it's an extra box or some extra help to see over the top and see what they need. But better yet would be get rid of the fence. So let's go ahead and drop the fence. So that's not even in the way. And maybe even better yet, would be to have no distance here at all, that the people who want to see you can actually go be with you with no fence, no barrier, no nothing. So let's try that. You get to be with the people again. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. So equality, everybody got the same size piece. Equity, people got what they needed to be able to see. And even better, get rid of the fence. Now, making sure that everyone has what they need is a kind of universalism. At a time when people in Europe and in this country taught and believed that some people were going to go to a place called heaven after they died, and some would go to a place called hell after they died, the Universalists in our tradition said, no, you've got it wrong. There is no fence. Everyone gets to go to heaven, no matter what. They said that love always wins in the end. And the Unitarians in our tradition said, there's no hell after we die. Hell is what people experience here on earth during their lives when they're hurting, when they're suffering, especially when there is a way to relieve their suffering and it's not happening, and especially when someone is doing something that causes other people hurt and harm. So both the Universalists and the Unitarians thought about it a lot, and they worked hard and taught that it's important to make sure that more people have what they need to be safe and healthy and happy in body, in mind, and in spirit. And so, my friends, do we. I invite us to sing, at the very least, Ruby, on her way to Kids Connection with this little light of mine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Harmony's always welcome. Harmony's always welcome. Well, so we have this wheel up there, our wheel of our wheel of values. Although if anyone has a fortune, do let us know. Our wheel of values has turned to equity this week. For those who are new or here for the first time, a special welcome. We're glad you've chosen to be here today and that you've risked exploring a new community. May you find yourself welcomed warmly and sensitively by everyone you encounter today. And may you find here both a glimmer of the community that you seek and something that feeds your spirit in a way that means something to you. Throughout the summer, we're exploring 6 values that arise when we center love as our primary focus. This is part of a process of Unitarian Universalists from all over, clarifying for this new era, what matters most to us and why. We're trying on new language for size and fit in preparation for the powers that be, which in our tradition is the members. The members are the power that be to decide together whether we've got this right, whether we have this right enough to claim these values and this language for ourselves. Again, I'm so sorry Tracy's not able to be here today to share her powerful voice on equity, her perspective on equity. And as I said earlier, I'm glad that she can be home resting and our love goes out. I can share that as we were planning the service together, Tracy said that what was most important to her was helping people understand the difference between equity and equality. She said if we could do one thing, that's the thing she wanted to come across. And so we've made a little start on that. And if we were to buy a vowel for today's effort, perhaps it would be oh. In fact, may it be oh. Though you may not be certain now what you've gotten yourself into, welcome. All of us in the room and online to this precious time we make room for together.
On equity, from the proposed revision of our Unitarian Universalist Association's statement of purpose and covenant. See how this feels for you. equity. We declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. We covenant promise that to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. We declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. We covenant to use time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May I be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we all filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole. May all be filled with loving kindness. May all be well. May all be filled with loving kindness. May all be well. May all be peaceful and at ease. May all be whole.
Invite you to rise in body and spirit and to sing all one more time.
May all be filled with loving kindness. May all be well. May all be filled with loving kindness. May all be well. May all be peaceful and at ease. May all be whole.
I haven't invited this for a while. On a scale of Where are you today? All things considered, on a scale of thumbs down to thumbs up, where are you today? Take a look around. Let's see. Yeah, whole range, whole range. Thank you. Thank you. Sometimes I forget to stop and ask myself, where am I? What's going on? So this is our chance each week to pause for a moment and really listen within. May have been a busy week, may have been active with other things. Here's a chance to breathe for a moment and pay attention to what and who is in your heart. Who are you just incredibly happy for because of what's going on in their life, maybe even yours? Who are you a little bit worried about, concerned, not sure they have what they need or that they're going to make it through something? Or where are you feeling really sad, at a loss, or afraid? What's in you on this particular morning? Noticing is the first step. The next may be simply being with that, spending time with what you're noticing. A step for you may be voicing a prayer in your heart, a plea, a hope. For you, it may be making a plan for how to respond to what you're noticing. I invite us to hold the silence together as the music plays and people come forward. Stay with that. Stay with that sense of what's in you at the same time you're aware that you're not alone in the room. If you would like, you are welcome to come take a stone from the table, place it in the bowl of water to represent what you hold. Let the bowl remind you, this shared bowl, that you are not alone. Let the water remind you that all things change. Nothing lasts forever. Invite us to hold each other in tenderness, in quiet, in prayer, in music. I've placed a stone for Tracy, for all the joys and sorrows in the room and beyond, and a stone too for the thank yous that might be rising in you today, the gratitudes. There's a stone there for Community UU Church in Plano, Texas, firebombed last weekend. There's a card to sign to send messages of love and back. If you're in the room, I invite you to sign or to send cards of your own too. There's the shooting in Seattle recently, I'm sorry to say, yet again. Then there are the everyday, close in things that remind us that we are held, that we are human, that we love, that we have losses, that we are fortunate. I invite us to sing the meditation on breathing, holding all of it. We breathe all of it in and all of it out. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit, to find a comfortable, easy standing stance if your body will do that. Oh, that felt good. We declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. We covenant, we promise to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. I've shared before the story told of Hosea Ballou, the most well-known of the Universalist theologians and preachers active on this continent in the late 1700s and first half of the 1800s. Hosea was arguing with a minister from a different Christian tradition, telling him of his belief in the absolute love offered by God, and that everyone would therefore be welcomed into heaven in the end. In other words, his belief in a universal salvation for everyone, which is how we get the name Universalist in our very long name. It was then a rare and dangerous idea, a belief that still gets people kicked out of some Christian churches and denominations. One of the critiques of universalism over the ages has been that without the fear of hell and the promise of heaven, people won't be motivated enough to do the right thing. So at one point, the other minister traveling with Ballou back in the 1800s said, "Brother Ballou, if I were a universalist and feared not the fires of hell, I'd hit you over the head and steal your horse and saddle." Hosea Ballou, it is said, looked over at him and replied, "My brother, if you were a universalist, the idea would never occur to you." A true story at heart, whether or not it actually happened. Holding love at the center, as the universalists always have, and our belief in and our commitment to the right of every person to flourish goes way back, even if we don't always live up to that aspiration. For universalists who are theists, that dignity and worthiness is rooted most often in a sense of God's love. If God loves everyone absolutely, then we are called to do no less. And if the divine resides within every person, then every person, no matter what, has what the universalists termed supreme worth. They didn't say inherent worth, they said supreme worth. For other universalists, particularly those who are not theists, that supreme worth is known primarily through our own powerful sense of human empathy. Empathy that's cultivated and born of our experience and valued in all kinds of variations on the inspiring and aspiring golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Or of course, better yet, the platinum rule, do unto others as they would have you do unto them. In this day and age, most of us still actually hold ideas of universal salvation, what we think is going to be the best possibility for people, though we probably don't use the word salvation very often. Our UU tradition itself, through our values, our principles, our purposes, this new set of ways of thinking about things, we're also naming in some way our sense of universal salvation, what we think is going to be best for all. The idea of a chance to flourish, for example, is a form of salvation, right? Echoed in the proposed language related to justice, which we'll explore in a couple weeks, where the goal named there is the chance for everyone to thrive. Very similar. We hold this value, spoken or unspoken, that everyone should have the chance to flourish, that everyone should have what they need in order to flourish, and that we, therefore, should help do what we can to make sure people can flourish, right? Help them have what they need to flourish, including removing obstacles to their thriving and their well-being, which in the process removes obstacles truly to our own well-being, right? When we do that for others, we're also benefiting our own selves. It's a universal goal or a hope that we hold for people, which is why so many things that are happening in the nation and the world, and why so much current public rhetoric feels frightening and confounding. Since Tracy and I started thinking about this service focused on equity, the United States Supreme Court decided that policies at Harvard and the University of North Carolina that consider race as a factor in admissions are unconstitutional because they violate the guarantee of equal protection before the law established by the 14th Amendment. The court's decision can be seen as only one of the most recent failures to value equity as an important means to flourishing. In our local newspaper just 3 days ago, one of the regular local columnists failed in a very similar way, claiming, quote, that systemic racism of the past has been essentially overcome. News to some people. Unable to realize, truly unable to realize that a call for colorblindness, for treating everyone exactly the same, doesn't do what's needed to help all to flourish. It's based on that kind of simpler notion of fairness, right? Everybody getting the same thing. One of the tweaks of the fence metaphor is to understand not only that the resources and the barriers to flourishing are not equally distributed among us, both by chance and on purpose, but also that some people start out in a hole that's been dug over the centuries by oppressive policies and practices, not even starting from the ground level, but from a hole that's been dug. I found some new food for thought in a 2019 document that Lindsay Dunkel shared with me, and from which we drew the idea of today's Wisdom for All Ages with its fences and boxes and people of different heights. It's by John Powell and Stephen Menendian and Wendy Ake out of the Othering and Belonging Institute at UC Berkeley. The authors say that the current divide we're feeling in the nation is more than differences in ideology or more than about disagreements over facts, that it's fueled by a growing feeling of unfairness. Not just the ideas, right? But a feeling of unfairness and a perception that our governmental, our collective approaches to the common good are a zero-sum game, right? That if one group benefits disproportionately, then other groups are going to be left behind or overlooked or are in fact being penalized in that process. It's a feeling that the government is not remaining neutral, right? Which would be the ideal in theory, right? But taking sides or taking the wrong sides, as the case may feel. That feeling of unfairness, they say, is what we're dealing with. So we can do all kinds of policy things, but the driving factor is the feeling of unfairness. And I have to say, I know from conversations with people I love dearly that this feeling of unfairness is very much central to what motivates their views. They have a sense of things being unfair. Powell and Menendian and Ake write that we are stuck, and unnecessarily so, in having just two ways to approach this. Either a universal response, treat everybody the same without regard to group membership or status or income. It's a universal approach. Or a targeted response, single out and make provisions for selected groups who most need it. Generally then, not doing that for everyone, not doing that for others. So a universal response, let's do the same for everybody, sounds good in a diverse and pluralistic society, they say, but it's often viewed as unaffordable, too expensive, right? Or overly ambitious, it's too much to take on. Think universal health care or national guaranteed income. And while often still not, and those universal efforts still often don't really help the people most in need, because they've been cast universally without taking into account the particular lives and values and needs of those people. So they're not really seen. So often marginalized people are kind of question universal approaches. Their experience is it doesn't really do what it needs to do. Targeted policies, they say, may be more efficient, right? Because they're targeted, and less costly because they're targeted. But by targeting a particular group, they have that effect that I'm talking about. They can be viewed as unfairly helping one group over another, and in the process, seeding hostility and resentment. Think welfare and affirmative action. One weakness of targeted programs, they say, is that they're vulnerable to political challenges, which we're seeing all over the place, especially when the targeted group is an out group or perceived as undeserving, right? That's That's the rationale that's named. To break through that gridlock, to address the problems of our time, and to create new avenues for helping individuals and communities thrive, the authors suggest a third way, and you know I love third ways. Targeted universalism, the title of their piece. Targeted universalism, they explain, means setting universal goals, things that we want everyone to be able to reach. Everyone, right? We want everyone to be able to reach these goals, and then pursue those goals by targeted processes that help people as they need get to the one shared goal. To frame this difference, one problem with the universal response, which aims to treat everyone the same, as if treating everyone the same is the ultimate goal, is that it's possible, even likely, that no one reaches the true goal. For example, making sure that everyone has the same amount of food or even the same access to food doesn't necessarily ensure that anyone has enough food. They just have the same amount and the same access. It doesn't guarantee that anyone has enough. The real goal in that scenario would be to make sure that everyone is adequately fed. That's the goal. Equality is a means to it. Universal responses risk mistaking equality for the end goal, when in truth, equality is a means. The reason to have equality is so that no one has obstacles to their reaching that final goal. With targeted universalism, as they present the idea is to identify, promote, and move everyone, all groups, toward a universal goal, one we want for everyone. The targeted part aims to support the particular needs of particular groups to reach that universal goal, even the politically powerful, even those in majority. In other words, it's a goal for everyone to flourish in some way. While the universal part reminds everyone that we are all in this together. That's the value of having this kind of view, right? It moves us from us and them to we're in this together. We all want to be able to get here. So it's not us and them. It grounds us in a shared goal, and it emphasizes concrete results, not just the right approach. Not are we taking the right approach, but are people getting here, right? So that becomes the measure. The emphasis here in this idea of targeted universalism is having a genuinely shared aspiration that raises everybody's expectations about what can be. Expectations of all groups, and it doesn't set a goal based just on what privileged groups already have, right? We tend to say, what do privileged groups already have? Let's make that the goal. That may or may not be a decent goal. What's the goal that everyone can sign on to? In a primer on this targeted universalism, Powell and Menendian and Ake, they address another common equity metaphor like the looking over the fence metaphor. The metaphor of a set of people each trying to reach an apple on a tree branch. Now you can picture this same scenario, differences in height. The tall person can already reach an apple. And the standard equity approach would be to get everyone enough boxes underneath, or a ramp, or a lift for the wheelchair, whatever's needed so that everyone can reach an apple like the tall person can. But this suggests that the goal is for everyone to reach and pick an apple, when the real universal goal would be, in this case, to get the apples harvested to share with everyone so that everyone in the community eats. In a targeted universalism, it would be important to people picking the apples because they've signed on to this goal to help make sure that everyone eats. That's the larger goal. So they make sure that our apples get harvested and spread out even to people who aren't even in the picture yet, right? And that could happen in a lot of different ways. The way it could happen can vary. Now, of course, this assumes that people want to eat apples. It's a golden rule kind of approach, right? Assumption that everyone wants the same things, meaning what I want. Again, the real shared universal goal would veer toward the platinum rule, that everyone has enough sustaining, nourishing, and appealing to them food. The authors acknowledge the complexities and how difficult this is to do, and they go into a lot more detail about targeted universalism and suggested steps, and they share some examples where they think this is working in the world. would add that there are strong critiques of the pursuit of equity from both the right and the left. And I'm approaching it this way today, again, because I'm always trying to find a path through the impasse, right? There's plenty of inequity to lift up in the world. What do we do from where we are to find a way forward? For me, the idea of targeted universalism opens up the conversation and the possibilities a little bit. We've known that we'll need to find a strong enough common goal if we hope to ever find our way through the divisiveness, right? How can we do that unless there's something shared? When we use declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness, we're naming a universal goal, one that we hold for everyone, even the politically powerful and those in the majority, and those whose political aims feel so antithetical to our own, right? When we say this is the goal, we're universalists about this. We're saying we want everyone to flourish. For me, that's the subtle and I think important turn that targeted universalism invites. Without letting go of our awareness of inequity and the vital call to support various marginalized groups in unique ways, in our own hearts and in our own minds, can we do that while genuinely claiming everyone's flourishing and thriving as our ultimate goal, as our universalist goal, which means flourishing and thriving, not just economically and socially, but also spiritually and ethically and emotionally and morally. Even as we draw on the commitment to justice that is so important in our tradition, can we hold in our hearts, really hold in our hearts, the aim of everyone's thriving, the genuine desire that all be peaceful and at ease and whole? Because I think then we have the best chance of doing the hard, difficult, deep work of building equity in the world when we're anchored in that understanding. Because that has a chance to change not only what we can accomplish and how we go about it, but how we feel along the way and who we become. The proposed language around equity gets a little bit more specific and demanding before it finishes. We covenant, we promise to each other to use our time, our wisdom, our attention, and our money to build and to sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. Fully accessible so that no one's prevented from being part of the community because of barriers that are seen or unseen, and fully inclusive so that everyone's uniqueness is genuinely welcomed and celebrated. I told Tracy as we read that part of this proposed value that speaking of accessible and inclusive, I had just seen an accessibility worksheets project on the UUA website, the association's website. It's a series of 18 worksheets that helps congregations access and learn and gradually make concrete changes in order to be truly fully accessible to all people. And I told her, phew, 18 worksheets. That's gonna sound to people and to me like a lot of work. And we concurred that yes, all of this is a lot of work and that we weren't going to let that stop us. That's the point. It's a lot of work. It's hard, no matter how we're approaching any of this. And can we stay with it, even though it's hard, even though it's difficult, even though it might not look like it's succeeding in a given moment? That's really the point. Because it moves us in the directions we need to go for our own sakes, as much as anyone else's. And oh, may we be so. A little at a time, perhaps, or a lot at a time, may we be so.
25% of our offering this month will go to Color Me Human, started by Tracy, whose mission is to celebrate, elevate, educate, advocate, and create a sustainable and safe and equitable world for Black, Indigenous, people of color, and LGBTQ folks. If you'd like your full offering to go to Color Me Human, please place it in the white envelope. Your giving is also vital to sustain our community, our UUCM community. Thank you for your generosity. And please know there are other ways to give by texting, writing directly to the church through mail, through the website, or PayPal. Dedicate these gifts to the workings of our church community and to Color Me Human, the workings to bring equity to all. Thank you so much for your generous offerings.
Carol, thank you for your to move into the role. Much, much appreciated. Thank you to Tracy for thinking this through. We'll look for her voice whenever we can get it. Thank you to Alan for reading this morning. Thank you to Toby, beautiful playing. The Joys and Sorrows in particular, that really drew us inward. Andy and Paul and Cypress, thank you so much for your wonderful work this morning, as well as so many. Eileen for being online. Linda for a beautiful red setting. Each of the values comes with a color attached to it. So today is red, you may have noticed. Linda, it's beautiful. Carmen and Connie, thanks for greeting, as well as Laura. Shannon Dooley Miller and Keith were responsible for working on refreshments this morning, and Cheryl Spalding and Susan Merrill were part of Kids Connection today. There's an artist reception after the service for Lisa Hayden, whose art is hanging up in the library right out this way. Come celebrate with Lisa and take a close look at that art. Circle suppers are small gatherings in people's homes, and they're looking for hosts. Sign up by August 5th. Today we'll start our five-week starting point series coming up for new folks. Get Out the Vote postcards are back from Gail here. You can be a club member and get 3 packets for 3 months worth of cards, or get an individual packet. They're out here in the entryway. And as always, keep watching your newsletters, both the weekly and the monthly, as well as check the website for more information. I invite us to close with the fire of commitment. So when I say, and it's hard, that's simply meant to say, yep, 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 that's it. I say, people ask sometimes why, what drew me to ministry, or why I like ministry, or something in that vein. And I always say, in part because it always calls me to my best self. Dang it. Again and again, like, again, here we are, right? Ideally, Unitarian Universalism, being part of this community, keeps calling us to our best selves, even though we have to sometimes go, that's a lot of work. It's not always work, right? We get to have joy too, but I want to acknowledge that piece today. So I invite us to rise in body or in spirit and to sing the fire of commitment, because that's what we're talking about and needing in order to keep finding our way through the yup. May we remember that universe-birthed spark, the divine spark, the inherent dignity and worthiness shining in every person, including us. May we do whatever we can to help everyone, meaning everyone, to thrive, to flourish, to reach what they need. May we keep our own flames burning when winds reach gale force strength and downpours drench our hopes. May we hold the light and the warmth for each other until in our healing, we're able to recognize it burning, shining in our own heart again. We remind ourselves each week to carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. If you're here in the room, please join us for refreshments and art exhibit. And otherwise, we'll see you next Sunday with Lindsay Dunkel for From You I Receive, To You I Give, and Another Value.